The expansion of larger power tools into the cordless category continues as we see more cordless table saws now hitting the market. Milwaukee just released their M18 FUEL 8¼ inch table saw running on an 18-volt platform with a single battery pack. Milwaukee also released a newer, larger capacity M18 12.0 amp hour battery at the same time. That's for longer runtime and better performance on these big capacity tools like the table saw. And guys, while this isn't the first cordless table saw that we've seen, our teams have been using DEWALT FlexVolts for over a year now. We have 3 or 4 of them out there. It is the first 18-volt table saw on the market, which is very exciting for users who have heavily invested in that M18 platform already. So we currently have 2 of these Milwaukee saws on the job sites right now. We're the first website to get it, and we've been testing them out for a few weeks. Todd has one up in New Hampshire on a commercial building renovation project, and I have one here that I've been bouncing back and forth with me on a large house addition and a screen porch trim project. So this has allowed us to get some really great hands-on time with these saws and a really good perspective on a new saw to give back to you guys. Some of the features right out of the box that I noticed on the saw that I like: it's got a 24.5 rip capacity, maximum bevel to 47 degrees, and it has a single wrench blade system, which is pretty cool. But my real first impression, right out of the box, the Milwaukee M18 table saw impressed me with its quality of materials that they made it with. It's got solid materials and a metal frame. There's a rack and pinion fence that is a quality feature that we've come to expect from job site table saws, DEWALT being the leader in that category. We've been big fans of the DEWALT rack and pinion fence since it's earned its reputation as a sturdy, repeatable, and accurate fence. Let's face it, DEWALT has raised or set the bar for table saws. Let's talk about, there's a new blade height adjustment I want to talk to you guys about, and probably one of the more annoying features that I have with the DEWALT FlexVolt is that the operator, when raising the blade, you have to rotate that knob a ton of times to get to full height. Milwaukee designed a larger gearing ratio in their blade height and can achieve full blade height in 14 turns, 14 rotations. In contrast, the DEWALT FlexVolt requires 35 turns to raise the blade, so 14 to 35. That's a nice time saver for me. Milwaukee also has a new switch design. One of the biggest improvements, I think, compared to the competition, the FlexVolt, is the on-off switch, which works easy and effectively. It's robust, it's much easier to use than the DEWALT switch that can be frustrating at times because if you let go too quickly of the switch after you turn on it hits the off button, it turns it off. The Milwaukee also features what's called a power loss safety, which means if the switch is powered on and you're using the saw or it's turned on and the tool stalls, the battery is removed, or maybe the battery just runs out of juice, the tool trigger, the tool switch, will need to be recycled off and on to put the saw back on. It goes back to off, which is great. It's a really nice stackable saw. The frame and handles on the M18 table saw make it very easy to carry, and it's just nicely squared. It weighs just over 40 pounds, extremely portable. It's really a great option for punchless work, finish work, and remodeling, where that's my wheelhouse, especially where a larger saw isn't practical. It is very easy and comfortable to carry. One nice feature that we notice is how nicely this saw stores on its side, especially my tool trailer, right up against the wall. The saw table and the feet actually line up. They're in position to allow the tool to sit flat and securely. It also is gives a nice option that you can stack on this thing. So it sits solid, you can stack on it, you can put toolboxes and stuff on top of it, which is a nice selling point. There is a riving knife and blade change that I want to talk to you guys about. It's a tool-free guard and riving knife removal, which is an excellent feature on any saw. There's no need to actually remove the plate and go down by the blade to remove the riving knife. There is a lever. It's on the back of the saw. It's like a cam lever. You just release that, take the riving knife or the guard out. Really nice feature. The other thing about that is there is I told you about the one wrench blade change. So the one single wrench system in conjunction with a push button, kind of a shift arbor lock. You just hold the arbor lock in and use one wrench. Works great. This saw is also capable of allowing for a 6-inch stacked dado, 6-inch max, and also Milwaukee will be offering a dado throat plate as an accessory. Another thing that's interesting to note is Milwaukee built in 2 miter slots on either side of the saw that enables you to use like a cross-cutting sled, whereas the DEWALT FlexVolt has 1 miter slot. Dust collection. Milwaukee spent some time thinking about dust collection, it's obvious to me, and they installed this canvas cover around the blade. It's a frame, kind of enclosed frame, and a canvas cover that follows the blade trunnion as the blade moves. This design basically helps keep the dust in alignment with the dust extractor suction flow, and basically just keeps that dust flowing in the right direction so nothing falls, not a lot falls down on the ground. The reality is that most contractors don't connect the dust extractor to their saws when they're working most times. Not all, but most. But when hooked up, it does work reasonably well. Milwaukee offers a scissor style stand that has an adjustable foot. Assembly is required, and I found the instructions and labeling for that stand horrible. Finally figured it out, but I got it right. It attaches to the stand without any fasteners, and the height, the table height once on the stand is 34 inches off the ground. Let me see. There's been some negative talk, right, about cordless table saws. I want to address that for a second. Over the last year or so, since cordless table saws have started hitting the market, I've seen all kinds of online social media comments about the cordless table saw being useless, ineffective, maybe not worthy of a real job. However, what we've seen from our experience on job sites is just the opposite. They're truly effective tools. You can get a large amount of work done, especially what I do, remodeling and trim work and some small framing. It's portable, they're versatile, and extremely useful. So the statement is really only true if a saw can't perform a large portion of the task that you do. And this saw does it, at least for me. So let's go back to the Milwaukee saw. They completely redesigned their motor and electronic package. And that was obviously so they could manage the power of a 12 amp hour battery and keep up. But when you focus on making a better motor, you invest your money and your effort into higher grade magnets and more copper. And that's what Milwaukee did. And they did that obviously in order to generate the power needed to power a table saw on one battery. They also upgraded some behind the scenes stuff like firmware, electronics, and some of that stuff too. Again, so that the whole tool talks to each other. It's a smart system. I did speak to Milwaukee, and they have 0 plans to offer an AC/DC dual power table saw. No plans in the future for that. But we did start comparing the 2 saws, right? Because you can't help it. You start thinking about the FlexVolt versus Milwaukee. Milwaukee motor has a slightly higher RPM motor, which means it'll most likely excel when ripping 3/4 plywood and 1x stock. The real question in everybody's mind is, what about runtime? How do the two, what's more powerful? Which saw is better? Well, if a saw can't run long enough, there's really not much sense in having it on the job site unless you just want to look at it because it's pretty. Big paperweight. So we decided to take a look at some of the runtimes. Milwaukee claims that the saw can achieve the following runtime on that 12 amp hour pack. They can rip 600 lineal feet of 3/4 OSB plywood, 200 lineal feet of 2x SPF, and 250 lineal feet of 1x oak. They also claim that 12 amp hour pack will double the runtime of a DEWALT 6 amp hour pack and give you 30% more runtime than the DEWALT 9 amp hour pack. So we decided not only to test runtime, but to pit the 12 amp hour pack, the Milwaukee pack, against its competitor DEWALT FlexVolt saw. And we decided to use a brand new 9 amp hour FlexVolt battery pack. Not exactly apples to apples or a fair fight, I get it, but it's the biggest DEWALT battery available right now that I can get my hands on. I will note to you guys that DEWALT has plans to release a 12 amp hour battery pack. It's a 216 watt hours pack, and it's coming out soon, but it's just not available right now. So we will test it when it comes out. So the 12 amp hour battery will no doubt from DEWALT let us compare an apples to apples. But for now, this is what we did. So we did a runtime test. We used new, fully charged batteries, a set of identical new blades, both set at the same height. And basically we proceeded to make repetitive 1/4 inch rips in 5/4 5/4 inch pressure treated deck boards. And we did 3 rips, shut the saw off, and allowed it to rest for about 2 minutes while we performed the exact same 3 rips over at the other saw, side by side. We recognized that this is an aggressive test on a cordless tool, ripping like this. But you know what? We probably were very close to thermal shutdown by the end of this test. The batteries were pretty warm, but we wanted to really push these saws to see what they could do. So during the test, both operators noted that the Milwaukee saw felt more powerful, at least visibly excelled over the FlexVolt in dust collection. There was a big mess under the FlexVolt, not so much under the Milwaukee. But as far as results, the DEWALT ripped 33 rips of the 5/4 pressure treated. That's 264 lineal feet. The Milwaukee ripped 38 rips for 304 lineal feet. So 5 more rips. That's only about 15.2% of lineal footage. It did not blow away the DEWALT out of the water. It didn't do it, especially when you consider that DEWALT was operating with a smaller 9 amp hour battery. So if you look at watt power, just watt power of the batteries, Milwaukee actually lost the runtime battle. And let me break down the watt hour power for you a little bit. The breakdown in watt hours per cut, right? We call it watt hours per cut, is this. The Milwaukee 12 amp hour battery, it's an 18 volt by 12 amp hours equals 216 watt hours. If you divide that by 38 cuts, you get 5.68 watt hours per cut. DEWALT, on the other hand, is a 9 amp hour pack. It's a 54 volt by 4 amp hours when it's running 54 volts, which equals 162 watt hours. 162 watt hours divided by 33 cuts equals 4.90 watt hours per cut. The DEWALT pack also can do 18 volts by 9 amp hours, which is 162 watt hours as well. So what if we had used a DEWALT 12 amp hour battery? Well, the DEWALT 12 amp hour battery has the equivalent of 216 watt hours. Coming out soon, but not available right now. So if we follow the same principle with the DEWALT's 12 amp hour pack and we extrapolate that data, right? We just do the math and kind of figure it out based on that watt hours. This is how the DEWALT 12 amp hour pack would look like. 216 watt hours divided by 4.1 amp hours equals 52 cuts. So based on that data, the DEWALT saw will give you far more runtime than the M18 Milwaukee. I do want to note that even though the FlexVolt is marketed as a 60 volt max, it's actually running on 54 volts nominal when it's running at 4 amp hours. It's only 9 amp hours when it's running on a 20 volt, 18 volt max tool. I also want to note that during our testing, the DEWALT saw did not have a riving knife attached. This saw has been assigned to my foreman. My foreman's been using it for many, many months, and he misplaced his riving knife when he dropped it off for our testing. So to mitigate that, while ripping, the person receiving the ripped board held out the rip portion slightly just to simulate a riving knife, just the thickness of a finger. Not nominal, I get it, but we wanted to get this test out and at least get these two saws pitted against each other while we waited for this 12 amp hour pack. We definitely will retest these saws with the riving knife, with the 12 amp hour pack soon, I promise you that. Want to talk about one key features. A lot of contractors, myself included, have not jumped on that bandwagon of one key, bandwagon, whatever it is. Instead, I've always said, oh, it's up to the commercial guys, they'll get excited about it. Well, the table saw has one key, and this one key technology, the more I think about it, there are probably 3 major benefits to having it on the table saw. So the first is security, the second is tracking, and the third, it's a stretch for me, but asset management. So security. The ability to completely lock out this saw is a huge liability issue, right? But also a longevity one as well. There's times when I leave my miter saw and my table saw on secure residential job sites. And by secure, I mean I have access, the plumber has access, the electrician has access. And only to find out, I show up later and find out the drywall contractor had it set up and he was using it without my permission. I've cable locked my tools and came back to find my tools set up with the cable still attached. So while you could make the argument that, well, just take the batteries out of the tools. Well, you could also make the argument that many contractors work off of my battery platform. So Locking it out is huge. Tracking your tool. If you run more than one tool, or you've got crews and you're running tools, knowing who has it, where it is, where it's being used, that's useful. I don't know about you guys, but have you ever finished a job and asked you guys, hey, have you seen that tool or the ladder or staging or job sign? I know I have, so that would be useful. Now, asset management, that's useful for managing your tool arsenal, like keeping track of model numbers, maybe serial numbers, purchase dates for warranty, maybe some repair work, stuff like that. Tracking and asset management, I think, working hand in hand, where you could track your tool in case of theft, which is a really, really nice feature. Kind of like the iPhone feature, Find My iPhone, will Find My Table Saw feature. Let's talk about price and availability. The Milwaukee M18 table saw is going to sell for $549 as a kit with a 12 amp hour battery, and $399 as a bare tool. You can expect to see this saw come out sometime in mid-July. And as far as my final thoughts on this, well, we were all really impressed with the saw and the attention to detail put into it. The saw, it's a prime example of the hard work Milwaukee is putting into building out the carpentry core tool category. And also, frankly, their commitment to making a cordless job site. That's a goal of theirs, and they're certainly, leading the pack with that. This cordless table saw is a fantastic tool with some really nice features. It was powerful, like I said, great features, and it now competes with the DEWALT FlexVolt. And I've always said a healthy competition means better tools for us. I'm Rob Robillard. I hope you enjoyed this tool review. Please consider subscribing, and we'll see you at the next tool review. Take care.